Elsewhere, the magnificent and towering castle in the distance serves as a backdrop to the bustling scene of the square in the capital of the Grandana's Mainslia Beastman Federation. As mentioned before, Sheena would have to undergo Kai's training. At this moment, he held a small dagger in his hand, standing in a defensive posture facing her, with Mare standing aside as a referee. She held out one arm in front of her with a decisive gesture, as if preparing to start the duel under the cold wind. She observed the two with a serious gaze and then waved her hand down, shouting loudly that echoed throughout the meadow. "Let's begin." Sheena's arms, hanging limply at her sides, suddenly became magically large, covered in a coat of glossy brown fur and revealing sharp claws like daggers of a predatory cat. She roared with a ferocious roar, partially transforming and then rushing towards Kai like a gust of wind. His eyes immediately became as sharp as a blade, holding up his weapon in defense with skilled movements. Sheena put all her strength into a powerful swipe, but Kai had managed to leap back and avoid it. She didn't back down but quickly followed with light but powerful footsteps. The sharp claws were once again swung hard, creating a whistling sound of the wind, but Kai could still easily avoid it by ducking his head with superhuman reflexes. The two fought back and forth for a long time in the vast, green meadow, one attacking and the other defending with the sounds of clashing metal. Kai glanced at her and said, "Is that all? I've told you many times, you have to attack me with the intention of destroying me." Sheena replied loudly with heavy breaths due to exhaustion, "I know." Then she gathered momentum and leapt forward, without knowing when. Sheena had approached Kai from behind like a silent and deadly ghost. She swung her sharp claws, preparing to slash hard with the intention of ending the match. Then suddenly Kai raised a fist in front of her face, seemingly aware of her movements from behind but ignoring them. His hands opened, and a pile of gravel was thrown into her face with lightning-fast movements. A stinging sensation immediately struck as tiny sand particles splashed into Sheena's eyes and flesh. At the same time, she instinctively raised her hand to cover her face while silently amazed. "What, sand?" Kai, taking advantage of her inattentiveness, without any hesitation, kicked Sheena's stomach. She immediately flew far away from the powerful force of Kai's kick. Mare, seeing her lying on the lush green grass, her mouth contorted in pain, quickly ran over and anxiously asked, "Are you all right?" Sheena quickly sat up, putting her hand to her stomach where she had just been kicked, and replied in a nonchalant tone, "My stomach hurts so much, you're still as ruthless as ever." Kai glanced and said sarcastically, "You're still easily fooled as usual, you should prepare to counter each wave of enemy attacks." Sheena raised her eyes, a little worried, and asked, "So, I still haven't succeeded?" He exhaled, putting the daggers into his pocket, and said, "Let's see, for now, you're still quite useless." At this moment, a figure walked over, and the worried voice asked, "Sheena, do you always have to practice so intensely?" This voice immediately attracted the attention of the three people. Sheena softly called out, "Rune." She sighed, feeling a little annoyed, and said to the other person, "This is what I want, don't stop me." Rune smiled lightly, reluctantly replying, "I was about to tell that boy to treat you more gently, but since you say so, I think I'll have to restrain myself." Kai looked at her inquisitively, "What do you need?" Rune stopped joking and explained clearly, "The main forces of the Federation are preparing to depart, to join the army of the Holy Nation. I came to tell you that." Kai, hearing this, a smile flashed across his lips. He said softly and satisfied, "It's finally about to begin, although it took longer than expected." Rune glanced, and reluctantly explained, "We couldn't do anything else, both countries wanted to discuss the alliance first. It seems the treaty was signed without any strange disputes." Sheena asked her at this moment, "Are you going too, Rune?" Rune replied, "I am the captain of the cat-person warrior army, so I will also participate with them." Mare turned to Kai and asked, "Kai, what should we do?" Kai folded his arms and replied in a deep voice, "Let's wait and see how things go. Furthermore, Sheena hasn't reached the level where I can take her with me." Since then, a considerable amount of time has passed. 1 month later, in the forest covered by lush green trees that shielded the light, the wind blew, causing the fresh green leaves to gently fall from the branches. The tense atmosphere enveloped the area with the confrontation of two people. Kai stood in the distance facing the large demon with a large halberd in his hand. At this moment, he raised the pistol and aimed it directly at it with the professional movements of a marksman. His eyes flashed purple, activating the skill with thought, creating a bullet with energy with the help of imagination. A direct thought appeared, then loaded the gun, his finger slowly placed on the trigger. Just as the mythical beast roared loudly like thunder and then swung the halberd, rushing forward with terrifying speed, he quickly pulled the trigger. The energy bullet shone brightly like a star right at the muzzle of the gun, slowly flying out, cutting the air. 3 or 4 bullets shot straight at the mythical beast with deadly accuracy. The mythical beast, hit by the bullets, caused the large body full of wounds to bleed fresh blood. It growled loudly in pain like thunder in the forest. Mayer, watching everything from a high branch, seeing this, he clapped his hands in admiration. The monster, after being hit by the bullets, only trembled and staggered as if drunk. It lost consciousness but was not completely defeated. Kai raised his gun again, firing a few more shots with a terrifying calmness. This time, he aimed the bullets at its vital points. The space was filled with the pungent smell of fresh blood. The huge monster just fell backward, completely defeated. Kai looked at the gun, which was still smoking, and slowly commented that the firepower was not yet strong enough against these monsters. Mayer asked, puzzled, "You took down one with only 6 shots, isn't that good enough?" He gently shook the gun in his hand with the practiced movements of a seasoned warrior. He said calmly, "A type of magic allows me to create bullets with energy. Actually, my idea was to use it as magic bullets. I never thought your strange device would make those bullets accelerate so fast." He continued to explain clearly in the tone of someone who deeply understood magic. The foundation of magic is imagination. If I can't imagine it accurately, it's useless. In our world, there is electricity. That's why I can imagine the image of lightning magic. His eyes, the color of the deep purple of the night ocean, fell into contemplation as he spoke softly in frustration. But even for someone from another world like me, imagining the bullet is quite difficult. Then he looked at the large, bullet-riddled body of the monster, and continued, "In that case, I can only visualize the knowledge based on the techniques I know. It seems this method is quite effective." Mayer, hearing this, responded with admiration in her eyes. "So, your world is like that." Suddenly, her expression froze like an ice statue as she sensed danger. As if noticing suspicious activity around here, she called out softly with a trembling voice. Kai also noticed and immediately responded with unwavering confidence, "Don't be afraid, I see it." Mayer glanced up and saw a large tiger with a ferocious appearance lurking to attack from the dense foliage. Its eyes were narrowed like 2 cuts, full of the craving and cruelty of a bloodthirsty predator, fixed on its prey. From the corner of its mouth, a stream of thick saliva, as clear as molten glass, began to flow down, dripping onto its whiskers. Mayer could only be still, whispering to Kai, "But bullets won't work on it." Kai leaped towards the tiger with lightning speed and shouted to Mayer, "Jump down." She obeyed and jumped down from the towering tree branch like a bird falling freely. He glared with a cold gaze. Pure energy began to gather in his palm. Waves of golden energy converged to create a ball, emitting a dazzling light that made the surrounding air vibrate and become hot. The surface of the ball sparkled with thousands of tiny lightning bolts. They danced and coiled like electric snakes, creating crackling sounds. With a strong and decisive movement, he threw the energy ball towards the tiger. He shouted in a solemn voice, "Pierce our enemy, O lightning spear." Accordingly, the giant tiger suffered this powerful attack. Its body being pierced by pure energy like a lightning bolt, it raised its head to the sky and roared loudly. The sound of pain and anger echoed throughout the dense forest. The tiger's body was now just a charred black mass, hanging on a high branch like a burning log. Its golden skin had turned black, and its characteristic black stripes remained only as faint embers. Meanwhile, Kai, with lightning-fast reflexes and dexterity, had rushed to catch Mayer before she hit the ground. He glanced at the tiger and said with a bit of boredom, "I have no problem using mid-level elemental magic, but I still can't use high-level magic properly." Mayer, held in his arms, was embarrassed, trying to ignore this feeling and responding to Kai, "Aren't you asking too much? No one has achieved this level so quickly." He didn't answer but turned his head and looked around, then asked her, "By the way, where's Sheena?" Mayer replied, Sheena is." At this moment, Sheena was on another side of the forest. She stood on the corpse of a huge monster like a victorious female warrior on the battlefield. Her hands were still in a half-beast state with blood-stained claws. She heard footsteps and looked over, calling out with obvious joy, "Kai." Her clothes were still stained with the monster's blood like fresh red paint, but she still happily ran to show off to Kai like a child who had just done something great. "I finally killed the monster you mentioned. How about it, did I pass?" He carefully observed the defeated monster. Its mouth was still wide open, revealing sharp teeth like razors, but its lifeless eyes, like cloudy glass, and the fresh blood all over its body showed how brutally it had been slain. Sheena stood anxiously to one side, waiting for a compliment from him. Kai nodded and said, "Okay, you passed, Sheena." At that moment, a smile bloomed on her lips like a flower. He looked into the distance with a determined gaze and said in a low voice, "Now we should start advancing to the territory of the Demon Kingdom." Under the clear blue sky, from fortresses as solid as impregnable rock mountains, where colorful signal flags fluttered, a large army marched out with the regular sound of chains hitting the ground. The bright sun shone on the shiny armor like silver mirrors. The allied army, including the warriors of the Holy Nation and the soldiers of the Federation, had begun the invasion into the territory of the Demon Kingdom. The elite army with skilled warriors like thunder gods and the most advanced weapons, however, the number and strength of the monsters in the territory of the Demon Kingdom caused heavy losses to the Holy Nation's army, especially at the first gate of the Demon Kingdom, which was called the Demon Forest. Through the dark demon forest like the mouth of hell, every step of the warriors and horses became as cautious as cats stalking prey in the dark. Anxious and uneasy expressions were clearly visible on the faces of each warrior like dark clouds casting a shadow. Someone's nose suddenly twitched as if sniffing, smelling a strange fragrance floating lingeringly in the heavy air. Edgar, as the leader of the werewolf clan, knew with his survival instincts, he whispered to announce, "It's the smell of the monsters, there are many of them, on the right flank." Narumi squinted, searching around, and whispered to confirm again, really?" Mireille also said, "I haven't detected anything." In front, there was only the echoing silence and darkness behind the dense bushes as if hiding danger. But Midu felt it with the keen senses of a seasoned warrior. He whispered, "No." Heinrich also noticed the monsters with eyes as sharp as knives. He said, "They're coming." Indeed, a moment later, a group of monsters of various strange types rushed in. They all bared their fangs and claws, lunging as if waiting to tear apart the army with deafening roars. Edgar swung his sword and gave the order with the authority of a victorious general, "Attack them." The warriors shouted in response, echoing throughout the forest, "Obey." Then they immediately charged into battle with their weapons in hand, each warrior with different weapons, different abilities, but all sharing the common determination to defeat the monsters like an undying fire burning in their hearts. The smell of fresh, pungent blood from the monsters covered the space like a deep red fog. Each ferocious monster was defeated by the talented warriors. Their sharp claws seemed like nothing compared to the brilliance of the Federation warriors. Those standing in the ranks who were not engaged in battle, when they saw it, all praised, "Amazing," everyone agreed, "Yes." Upon seeing the way they fought, a truth suddenly dawned in everyone's minds, so this is the strength of the Federation warriors. Midu was also astonished by the good progress of this battle. He whispered to Heinrich beside him, "The monsters are being destroyed so easily, it's beyond my imagination." Heinrich pondered and then seemed to realize the benefit of the alliance. We humans have used all 5 senses, but still can't detect the monsters. Having beastmen participate in the Legion is really good for us. Edgar put his sword back into its hilt with the practiced movements of a seasoned swordsman. Then he turned and said to everyone, "Let us handle the detection of the monsters. As long as we are here, they won't dare to ambush us." He spoke with absolute assurance, and as Edgar said, the beastmen did a great job of sniffing out and defeating the monsters. A warrior of the cat tribe quickly noticed the movement of the monsters with his sensitive ears, and he immediately shouted the announcement, "They are on the left." The warriors followed that instruction and immediately took up their spears and charged. The allied army was well equipped to repel all engagements with the monsters. The demons also gradually hid and didn't rush out to confront the army. As a result, the strategy of the high-ranking demon Elsa had significantly reduced its effectiveness. From here, it can also be seen that with guerrilla warfare and low visibility inside the forest, the reason why the UK had to suffer heavy losses in the previous campaign was because they couldn't predict where the monsters would attack. It seemed hopeless to cross the demon forest, but with the help of the warriors from the Federation, their amazing ability to find and destroy monsters. Before long, the monsters were defeated, their corpses lay scattered all over the ground, the pungent smell of fresh blood rose like the poisonous air of hell. From afar, someone watched this scene, angrily punching the wall and cursing softly in a hateful voice, "Damn it." A group of people from the Demon Kingdom hid behind a large bush and watched the allied army. They whispered to each other. The plan was to attack the enemy with a large army of monsters and defeat them when they were in a state of chaos, but now they are still unharmed. A demon with large horns asked, "How long do we have to watch?" The teammate replied, "Still haven't received orders from Elsa-sama. What do we do now?" The teammate seemed to feel stuck. He sighed and said, "There is no other choice, should retreat." Suddenly Edgar appeared behind them. He seemed to have heard the whole conversation just now. He scoffed, "I sure let you guys do that." The demon turned his head in surprise, angrily cursing, "You bastard. You." Without waiting for an explanation, fresh blood had stained the ground. Amidst the bewilderment, no one knew who struck first. Hiding behind the dark forest, where the night seems never to end, a towering castle rises into the sky. The air around it is heavy with a terrifying silence, the demon forest castle where Elsa resides. Elsa held a glass of red wine in her hand. She stood on the observation platform and had seen the chaotic scene in the demon forest. Elsa said softly, "This is bad." At this moment, a demon hurriedly ran up, his voice calling urgently, "Elsa-sama." Elsa glanced over, hearing the subordinate's worried report. The soldiers sent to the forest had been ambushed and killed. it seemed that the Beastmen warriors were causing more trouble than expected. Elsa didn't utter a word. But her eyes held a cold, sharp determination, her teeth suddenly clenched, crushing the drop of wine hovering before her, shattering it into tiny fragments like soap bubbles. The red wine spilled from the corners of her mouth, a gruesome mark left by a demon devouring its prey. Her icy gaze swept across the memory of her subordinate's humiliating defeat at Kai's hands. Elsa sarcastically remarked, "I knew it. I can't believe I have to clean up this mess that Bright made." The demon lowered his head, softly asking, "Your meaning, I understand how you feel, Elsa-sama, but with the current situation, what should we do?" He remembered the terrain of the forest and then continued in a hoarse voice, "They will have no other choice but to attack this castle. Anyway, they don't want to be ambushed from behind, they will definitely attack us." Anxiety enveloped the demon. He took a deep breath and, as if pushing himself into a corner, resolutely asked, even though he knew that it was something that should never be mentioned, "Do we have a chance of winning?" Elsa laughed softly. Her voice was still deep and soft, but the pressure and threat from her were clearer than ever before, making the person facing her feel like they were standing in front of a volcano about to erupt as she replied, "It's true that we are now cornered, but don't misunderstand my meaning. It's not that I'm weak or just relying on my tactics." I shook the glass of wine strongly, deliberately letting the dark red liquid overflow, as if getting rid of the annoyance. Elsa clenched her teeth, continuing with a sarcastic tone, "But anyway, it's easier to eliminate the enemy if we know how to use our brains to think. In the end, we just need to destroy them, right?" The demon only knew to obey, bowing his head respectfully, "Yes, Elsa-sama." At this time, the allied army had arrived at the castle. They stood towering outside, looking up at the castle immersed in darkness with a demonic appearance, a gloomy fortress like a button blocking the light. Edgar, who had fought with the demon army, issued a warning. His voice echoed in the silent space, "I already know their nest, there are many monsters here." Amelia with a cautious face emphasized, "We can't ignore this castle, we need to take the castle so we won't be attacked from behind when we go deeper. Moreover, if we capture the castle, we can use it as a base of operations in the front and it will be easier to receive reinforcements." Someone rode slowly forward, carrying disgust, and said, "It's a pain." Erasure frowned, sitting on the horse's back, and continued, "Then we just attack, right?" Heinrich turned his head and agreed with Arashi's opinion. "I allow myself not to want to give the enemy time to think, let's start attacking the castle immediately." Erasure smirked and then said, "Now you're starting to understand more." The allied army slowly approached the castle, completely unaware that behind the sturdy walls, countless demons were hiding ready to ambush. A formation of warriors gathered energy, joining forces to attack the giant gate of the demon castle. Above the ramparts, the demons suddenly threw down large stones, creating a deadly rain that poured straight into the allied army. They had to endure the fierce attacks while patiently holding their ground, waiting for the last wall to collapse. When the gate collapsed with a shaking roar, the allied warriors shouted loudly, "The main gate had been breached, advance." Erasure, in extreme excitement, released fiery spiritual energy, burning the demons. He laughed gleefully, provoking, "Come on, you trash." At this moment, someone came up and patted Midou on the shoulder and said to him, "Let's go, Midou." He turned around and saw that it was Edgar. He chuckled and said to Midou, "Let's destroy the high-ranking demons together, shall we?" Midou nodded lightly, then glared at the demon castle, resolutely replying, "I understand." Inside the castle, the silent space was completely opposite to the mad chaos at the gate. Elsa raised her head and took a sip of wine. She calmly smiled with satisfaction, as if the battle outside had nothing to do with her. Suddenly her eyes became cold. The exquisitely carved door swung open from the outside. Midou and Edgar entered the room where she sat. Elsa seemed to have foreseen this. She smiled gently, her voice soft but with a hidden meaning, saying, "You've finally arrived." Elsa stood up, her shadow lengthening on the cold stone floor, her voice deep, each word spoken though welcoming yet holding an unpredictable coldness. "So, you've finally come." Elsa stood on the high stairs facing Edgar and Midou. The vast room plunged into an eerie silence, yet tense to the point of suffocation, as if the air had thickened with invisible pressure. Midou clenched the glowing sword in his hand, his eyes staring directly at her. With extreme caution, he muttered, "This terrifying energy." Edgar, as if understanding his thoughts, immediately replied in a low voice, "That's right, there's no mistake, she's a high-level monster." Elsa slowly raised her slender hand. From the palm of her hand a long, snaking whip, black and shimmering with a purple hue like an octopus tentacle, slowly slid out, covered in sharp spikes. Her eyes swept over the two of them, then a cold, mocking smile appeared on her lips as she said, "The leader of the Beastmen warriors and a hero candidate. Looks like you're being too cautious." She suddenly whipped the long whip, it created a whistling sound that pierced the ears, along with a threatening voice that echoed, "But I have no plans to lose." Before she finished speaking, the whip was fiercely swung by Elsa, shooting straight towards Edgar and Midu like a giant python. Midu jumped up, dodging by a hair's breadth. The whip missed and struck the floor with tremendous force, creating a deafening explosion and causing the stone tiles to shatter, debris flying everywhere. As soon as the tiles fell, Midu was shocked to the extreme when he discovered a deadly trap. Behind it, he exclaimed, his voice lost with bewilderment, "The ground is." Under the broken tiles were thousands of sharp, black spikes, standing straight and close together to the point where not a single gap was visible, creating a terrifying terrain, each spike as sharp as a devil's claw, ready to tear apart anything that fell in. Elsa triumphantly said loudly, "I don't dare to underestimate you. I always prepare traps when the enemy comes." So the tiles continued to open, revealing a bottomless pit lined with a carpet of spikes. Midu tried to jump higher, desperately avoiding being swallowed by the pit. He heard the words carrying Elsa's cruel satisfaction echoing in his ears, being pierced and dying. Midu quickly raised the glowing sword towards the sky, muttering the incantation to activate its power, the first phase of the holy sword's transformation release. The sword blade then extended magically, winding and wrapping around the giant chandelier on the ceiling. Elsa saw through his plot. Thanks to the chandelier, Midu escaped the dangerous trap. He landed safely, but still a little bewildered. She narrowed her dark eyes, her lips slightly curled, whispering softly but full of surprise, "A sword that can freely change its shape, huh?" But in her heart, she thought with a slight satisfaction, "But the person accompanying it has fallen into those spikes." Midu only then realized that the person with him was nowhere to be seen. He ran to the edge of the pit, anxiously calling out, "Edgar." Immediately after the call, from the deep pit, Edgar with his familiar sword, immediately shot up, completely unscathed. He stood beside Midu and frowned, "It was dangerous, I almost got pierced." Elsa frowned, seeing that both were unharmed. It was incomprehensible since she deliberately set the trap. "He's not injured, but how?" Edgar chuckled, "It's simple, a double jump." Elsa, upon hearing this, muttered in annoyance, "That's just a ridiculous physical ability. Are all beast men like you?" Edgar pondered and replied, "Well, I'm a bit special. Now it's our turn." Then he and Midu raised their long swords, preparing to charge forward. As soon as he finished speaking, Edgar shot towards Elsa like an arrow, his familiar sword flashing in the air. Elsa also did not stand still and be overwhelmed. She fiercely whipped the long whip in her hand, emitting a hair-raising whistling sound, and then spoke in a cold voice, "Don't underestimate me." Suddenly, a demonic energy erupted around Elsa. She used her hidden skill, teleportation. Instantly, Elsa's figure completely disappeared from Edgar's sight. Instead she approached Midu without him knowing, causing him to stare in astonishment from the surprise. But Midu was a step faster. He raised the sword in his hand and gently said to her, "I've got you." Elsa glanced quickly behind her, her dark pupils momentarily showing a look of surprise. She clicked her tongue in annoyance when she saw this sight. Her hands quickly pressed a hidden button on the palm of her hand. Accordingly, the ceiling right above Midu's head suddenly opened, revealing a dark space. He exclaimed in surprise, "What?" Midu immediately became highly alert, directing his glowing sword towards the ceiling, ready to deal with any threats from above. Realizing he had lost his focus, Elsa's eyes flashed with a cold look. She quickly whipped the long whip straight towards Midu's stomach. The unexpected and vicious blow caused him to fall to the floor, his body bent over, clutching his stomach, writhing and screaming in pain. Edgar anxiously called out, "Midu." Elsa smiled with satisfaction, turned her head back, her eyes mocking Midu who was writhing. "I almost lost, kid. It seems that power is currently too much for you." Midu clutched his stomach tightly, slowly sitting up, trying to calm the pain. Elsa's dark eyes now glowed with an eerie purple color. Staring directly at him, she asked in a deep voice, her voice carrying a strange probing, "Hero candidates, you're from another world, aren't you? What are you fighting for?" Midu, upon hearing this strange question from her, frowned and asked again, "What?" Edgar, as if realizing what she was trying to do, shouted a warning, "Don't listen to that demon, Midu." Elsa was furious. Her anger flared when her psychological trick was thwarted. She turned towards Edgar, whipping the whip in her hand. Edgar realized this was the best time to counterattack. He shouted, "This is our chance, charge." Midu understood, decisively replied, "Yes," and then charged with him. He saw himself approaching Elsa from behind. As her entire focus was on Edgar in front, Midu knew this was a golden opportunity. Just as he raised his sword to prepare for the decisive blow, Elsa suddenly turned her head back. She looked straight into his eyes and spoke in a coy voice, her voice full of charm and pleading, "Stop, I'm sorry, please save me." The sword in his hand immediately faltered, the hesitation evident in his eyes. Elsa whispered, a smirk appeared, "You've lost your mind," then her hands quickly moved, preparing to use the whip to attack Midou. The long whip lashed out, not giving him time to react, and wrapped tightly around one of his legs. Elsa's seductive smile, with a sweet but malicious voice, told him not to be careless during the fight. As she yanked the whip with a decisive and malicious movement, the tightly braided rope binding Midou suddenly tightened like a giant python strangling its prey. The sudden and forceful pull caused him to fall helplessly to the floor, completely controlled by Elsa. His body was flung around incessantly in the vast room with towering stone walls, creating continuous crashing sounds that echoed throughout the space. Edgar anxiously called out, "Midou." Elsa found his reaction quite interesting, her lips curled into a mocking smile. "Oh, are you worried about a human? It seems your alliance is deeper than I thought." Edgar glared at her, his eyes filled with suppressed fury. Elsa scoffed, and her expression turned colder as she lowered her voice and said, "If that's the case." Without hesitation, she decisively swung the whip wrapped around Midou, throwing him towards Edgar like a toy. She continued, "I'll return it to you." But that throw was with full force, hitting so hard that both Edgar and Midou were flung far away, piercing the solid wall. And creating a massive hole, Elsa stood there, facing a path that went straight through 3 or 4 connected rooms, all of which were shattered. Bricks and debris fell throughout the space, but there was no sign of the two men. She was pleased and slightly curled her lip, thinking to herself, "Their spirits are weak, I can fight that beast-man alone." Suddenly, she heard a strange movement from the large hole in the ruined walls. From the dark void, a large, majestic wolf appeared, its eyes shining brightly in the darkness, but also carrying a wild, crazed look that was terrifying. She watched it slowly approach, a look of caution evident on her face as she wondered, "What is that?" Elsa frowned, lowering her eyes and carefully watching its every movement. Waiting until the wolf got closer, Elsa realized its large body with its snow-white fur was glowing. She immediately knew this was not an ordinary wild wolf. She slowly realized, her voice a little surprised, a wolf that doesn't shapeshift. Elsa clenched the whip in her hand and swung the weapon into the air, the wind whistling loudly like a siren, the sharp sound tearing through the stuffy atmosphere of the dark room. The wolf's eyes stared directly at her as if they could pierce to the depths of her soul, initially cold as ice but then gradually changing, slowly brightening with a wild and primal light, reflecting the hidden cruelty within the beast. The roar that erupted from the wolf's throat was like thunder in the dark night. Elsa suddenly froze for a moment, her body stiff as a statue. The mighty and powerful roar had penetrated through all layers of mental protection, leaving her completely stunned. The wolf roared again, echoing throughout the space, shaking every stone step, making the hanging lamps tremble and creating a terrifying echo that spread throughout the room. Immediately after that, the giant beast leaped towards her, its sharp teeth like daggers bared menacingly, ready to tear apart anything in its path. The space around immediately became engulfed in the strong stench of fresh blood. A series of dark, ancient castles appeared, the territory of the third prince in the western region of the demon kingdom Veldora, the city of Florelis. At this moment, Aquileia was uncharacteristically composed, her eyes full of sadness fixed on her hand. It seemed Elsa had been killed. She reached forward, intending to touch the glass surface, and the thin glass shattered, staining Aquileia's body red with blood. Even Edgar didn't have time to react. As expected, the Alliance warriors are truly troublesome, that's why I wanted to control them. The deaths of her close subordinates gradually filled her mind. Saganda, Bright, Elsa. My high-ranking subordinates have been eliminated. It seems I am being pushed against a wall. Suddenly, a low voice rang out, "Are you all right?" Aquileia, Leonhardt-sama, covered by a layer of glass, was unable to move. Aquileia curiously approached and asked, "Are you worried about me?" "Of course," he said, "you are my fiancé." Upon hearing this, her spirits soared, and she shyly replied, "Fiancé, yes, thank you, I'm fine." Then, Leonhardt-sama seriously mentioned a major matter. "I heard that Elsa is dead. The Alliance will arrive in the city of Forlist in a few days." Aquileia frowned and sighed, expressing her inner worry. "Do you think I can win?" "Frankly, I mainly work in the shadows, and my combat abilities are not very good. It will be a difficult battle because I am facing those who defeated Wimberg and Stonagaya." Next, Leonhardt-sama revealed important information that stunned her. Yes, currently the assassins of the Demon Kingdom are on their way to Forlist. Through Leonhardt-sama's account, they were hidden elites, doing dirty work. The assassins of the Demon Kingdom, as she already knew, were one of his key trump cards. Immediately after his words, Aquileia's eyes widened with excitement. "I will entrust you with commanding these elites, really." Leonhardt-sama's indulgence towards her was indeed very clear. Of course, I want you to hold your position until I return, my beloved Aquileia. Aquileia, moved to tears, affirmed her trust. Yes, Leonhardt-sama, leave everything to me, your fiancé. She was always facing the glass statue. I trust you, Aquileia. Afterward, Leonhardt-sama let himself go, expressing his feelings at length. I have failed to control the alliance, and for someone being cornered like me, he is still showing his love. Leonhardt-sama is truly a gentle person. Aquileia's tears flowed freely, and with a surge of happiness, she embraced the statue tightly. I will definitely reciprocate your love. In the territory filled with danger and conflict, the capital of the demon kingdom Eisenhart. In the trading district, the struggle for possession occurred. The henchmen always mistreated and oppressed others. In the most luxurious place in this land, the noble feet were hurriedly stepping on the red carpet. The maid hurried after her. Isabelle-sama, where are you going? Isabelle calmly said she was going to visit Alice. The giant iron gate opened. Isabelle and her maid headed towards the lawn where Alice waited to play every day. Alice's eyes lit up, and she happily called out, "Sis, Alice, the fifth princess of the demon kingdom." Isabelle looked at Alice for a long time. Until Alice jumped into her arms and hugged her tightly, Isabelle finally came to her senses. You're here. Isabelle avoided her, masking her indifference. It's not that I came here to visit you, I just had some free time so I stopped by. The maid stood there with a smirk, her mouth exposing the truth, but Isabelle silenced her. After all, she had come here. It's not good to be so stubborn, be quiet. Alice, naive and carefree, always lived innocently. I'm really happy, Isabelle asked with concern. What are you doing today, Alice? Then, Alice happily showed off the fresh flower crown. I'm making a hair decoration out of flowers. Look, it's beautiful, right? Alice put it on her head, curious about Isabelle's opinion and secretly admiring herself. What do you think, does it suit me? Isabelle praised her affectionately. Yes, it suits you, Alice. But Alice pouted, making a small request. Hey sis, say it properly. Suddenly, Alice went to get something, going to where she had just sat. Oh, right. Alice held up another flower crown identical to the one she was wearing. I made this for you. Isabelle slowly examined it, many doubts appearing in her mind. For me, did you have a feeling I would come to visit you? Suddenly, Alice pouted, sulking and complaining. Anyway, you don't do anything. I want to go out into the world too, but I'm told I can't. Isabelle coldly called out Alice's name. Alice asked in surprise, what is it? But the conversation ended with the words, nothing. Unexpectedly, Isabelle picked up the flower crown and put it on her head, and even said, what do you think? Seeing Isabelle's unusual appearance, Alice and the maid burst out laughing. You're so funny. On the contrary, Isabelle was stunned, not understanding what everyone meant. It was you who gave it to me, so I wore it. Oh right sis. Next, Alice changed the subject. When will we begin the ritual to summon the evil god? This made Isabelle's mood sink completely. Alice's voice was sweet as it poured into her ears. Behind it was a tragic ending. I heard I'll be sacrificed to the god. I'm really looking forward to it. The conversation was short. Yes, me too. I don't know the details, but it won't be long. Hearing this, Alice didn't think deeply, and was about to jump with excitement. I understand. On that day I'll be able to go outside, right? Isabelle's eyes darkened. Even the maid worriedly and cautiously called out, Isabelle-sama, I know. Then Isabelle turned and left, without leaving a word. Disappointment filled Alice's soul. Are you going home? As she got closer to the door, Isabelle instructed, I'll visit you later, be good. Alice politely, yes. On the other hand, Isabelle walked away slowly, her mind completely confused. A familiar voice came from somewhere, hey Isabelle. However, Isabelle didn't pay any attention. Leonhardt greeted her with a friendly wave. The third prince of the demon kingdom, Leonhardt-sama. Oh, you're distant again, can you call me big brother like before, right? The response was a harsh answer. No, I don't have the right to do that. Leonhardt chuckled. You're too rigid. Then, Leonhardt brought up Alice. Have you met Alice? Yes. Both of them stared at the door sadly. It's not good for that girl to stay in there all day long. Sooner or later she'll become a sacrifice to the evil god. Leonhardt added, with a hint of arrogance in his words, maybe she's lost her mind in this time. Anyway, becoming a sacrifice to the evil god is an honor. I'm really jealous. Leonhardt persistently asked Isabelle, don't you think so, Isabelle? Isabelle replied with only one word, yes. Then Isabelle coldly brushed past him, leaving Leonhardt standing alone there. Sorry, I have to go. The maid saw this and chased after her mistress. Isabelle-sama, wait for me. Immediately, Leonhardt's expression completely changed. In the desolate and dangerous land of the Veldora Demon Kingdom, territory of the third prince. This is one of the most expensive locations in the city of Forlist. And therefore the streets are crowded with people. The man's footsteps became increasingly hurried. Kai quickly weaved through the crowd. And then he stopped in front of an inn. At first glance, the sign on the board seemed a bit odd. The door seemed to have been open for a very long time. The innkeeper was sitting there, halfway through reading a welcome back newspaper. He put away the newspaper, and opened his mouth to ask, "So, what do you think of Forlist City?" Kai slowly commented, "It's alright, although the atmosphere is a bit stifling." The innkeeper agreed, complaining wearily, "Yes, because we can't stop the encroachment of humans, this place has become the front line, and many people are feeling uneasy." Suddenly, Kai mentioned a person of great influence. "I don't think you need to worry, the 4 great heavenly kings, Aquileia, are in this city." He hesitated, mentioning Aquileia's close subordinates who had died. "You're right, but Stonagaya-sama and Wimberg-sama were killed." He thought seriously for a long time. The terrifying hero candidates killed 2 of the 4 great heavenly kings of the Demon Lord's army. Then the innkeeper announced the urgent situation they were facing. "That's right, it's hard to believe, after all that, we were suddenly invaded, and moreover, the number of slaves seems to be decreasing recently, isn't it, even though there is a severe lack of manpower here." A slave with a chained neck, working hard, was scolded, "Hey, work properly." Yes. Kai worried about the situation getting out of control. If the slaves are gone, it would be quite troublesome, because I also have slaves following me. It's good that you understand me. Next, he pushed the room key across the table. "We have slaves doing all the odd jobs, and once the supply of slaves stops, we won't be able to continue our business anymore." He picked it up and casually replied, "Oh, I'm a little jealous. Your slaves are so cute. They are of marriageable age, aren't they?" "I don't know. Well, I shouldn't pry into the privacy of my customers." The conversation ended, and the 2 of them said goodbye, each doing their own thing. "Rest well." "Yeah, thanks." In Kai's room, Mayor and Sheena were already waiting. Mayor spoke from a corner, "Hello," while Sheena curiously observed, "Just as expected, you look really strange." He removed the fake horn, displaying a reluctant expression. "Yeah, if I didn't look strange, I wouldn't be able to do anything. I need to disguise myself in order to move freely in the Demon Kingdom." Sheena approached and sensed the scent emanating from Kai's body. "Your scent is different," and the beastmen noticed the difference, "but the demons won't. Once we disguise ourselves, there is no difference between us and the demons." Hearing this, Mare also understood to some extent, but then Mare raised the neck chain, frowning and reprimanding, "All right, but I still can't accept you treating us like slaves." He relaxed, leaned back, and sighed, "Because you 2 are too conspicuous, I had to disguise you 2 as demon slaves. That's the easiest way. It's not uncommon for demons to have slaves of other races." Mare was stunned, puffed out her cheeks, and repeated the question, "Are we really that conspicuous? Can you disguise us with your disguise skills, right?" Then Mare paid attention, not missing any explanation, "Because you are too beautiful. Once you attract the demons, they will easily recognize your disguise." After a while, Mare suddenly realized something strange, and shyly shouted, "Beautiful." Kai calmly affirmed, "Don't you realize?" "Yeah, maybe." He looked at Mare's frantic and confused state, her mouth stammering, and wondered, "Why are you so scared? I didn't think you would say that word. I'm just telling the truth." Sheena interjected, "Hey, Kai, what about me?" while Mare still hadn't recovered. Kai slowly pointed, "You have some similarities to Mare, but..." He finally stopped at Sheena's head. "Those cat ears are hard to hide." Mare pondered while looking at Sheena, trying to use her hands to hide the cat ears. "Yeah, that's right. If they find out we're making Sheena a slave, the Alliance will be very angry, won't it?" Kai explained the plan that was already prepared. "We are only disguising ourselves to easily infiltrate the demon's territory. We are just pretending to be a group of people, including a demon and his slaves." Suddenly, Mare's cheeks flushed when they talked about resting. "That's reasonable, but because we are your slaves, we don't have our own rooms." He replied, "That's why I rented such a large room. Is there a problem?" Mare immediately found a loophole, pointing towards the opposite side, but there was only one bed. Kai turned and touched the mattress, slowly dividing it clearly. "You 2 sleep on the bed, and I'll sleep on the floor. After all, I've been trained for this." Mare still cautiously said softly, "It's a little embarrassing, isn't it? What did you say?" Seeing this, Sheena spoke up to mediate, "Kai, please understand us." Before the words could be spoken, Mare quickly covered Sheena's mouth. "Mare means nothing." On the other hand, in Isabel's residence, the Veldora Demon Kingdom, territory of the 5th princess, the city of Siltbrook, a 2-dimensional spatial gate opened. Isabel stepped out of it with a deeply sad and gloomy face. The butler had been waiting early, and when he saw Isabel, he respectfully welcomed her back. Isabel-sama, thank you. Then he asked, how is Alice-sama doing? Isabel replied softly, she's still fine, she even gave me a hair accessory made of flowers. The two masters and servants walked and talked. Perhaps the concern for Alice in Isabel's heart was truly great. I am very happy to hear that, but the reason she is treated so well is because she will be the vessel of the evil god, nothing more than that. The image of innocent Alice playing happily appeared. Locked in that room, she must be very lonely. The butler's voice echoed again, bringing Isabel back to reality. Isabel-sama. It seemed like Isabel was pondering something. Our comrades have gathered underground. Time passed. Isabel stopped at a certain location. Countless demons under her command looked up, expressing their respect. Isabel glanced around. Her lips parted, about to move. Then, the subordinates took turns reporting, thanks to the death of Wimberg, you've been monitoring me, now I can move more easily. Currently, the rest are busy fighting humans, which is why they have time to think about internal matters. A demon subtly asked Isabel-sama, meaning Isabel. Clearly declared, with an aura of power, the time for revolution is near, I will defeat the demon lord and reclaim the crown. After saying that, the demons responded enthusiastically. They were extremely excited, clenching their fists, wanting to crush everything. I have been looking forward to this revolution. The preparations have been meticulous and long, so we won't be discovered. No one wants to lose. The demons all support Isabel wholeheartedly. I'm sure once Isabel-sama becomes the new demon lord, this kingdom will become better. Yes, we will do our best, Isabel-sama. No matter how happy, Isabel remained immersed in her own thoughts. Isabel worried about the burden of responsibility, forcing her to protect everything. I want to end this war with a revolution, that is not a lie. Among them was Alice's radiant smile, but above all, I want to protect her so I can do this. The more she thought about Alice, the more determined Isabel became. Her eyes were filled with resolve. I will betray this kingdom. The bustling streets, the territory of the demon kingdom of Vidora ruled by the third prince, the city of Forlist. Passers-by stopped and pointed. Hey, look, it's the Count. A middle-aged man and his subordinates walked towards them with grim faces. Count Castro of the demon kingdom of Vora. Count, you've just arrived. The subjects outside are kneeling on both sides of the road. He gnashed his teeth in annoyance. I'm really fed up, Aquilia. Count Castro grumbled unhappily, repeating that she dared to deploy the army without his permission. Even if her rank is higher than mine, I am still the governor of this city. Perhaps she is worried about the threat from humans. Castro deduced that 2 of the 4 heavenly kings had died. Surely, she's very uneasy. Castro's subordinate nodded in agreement. That's right, Aquilia is known for being cautious. Furthermore, her fighting ability is not as outstanding as the other heavenly kings. He glanced to one side. Look. He was acting as if the people in town were also worried about her unsettling behavior. Kai, hiding in the crowd, listened to everything. His eyes suddenly changed. So he's the nobleman ruling Forlist. It seems he's strictly managing the city under the orders of the third prince. Kai watched from behind Count Castro. I've heard that the demon world is where the weak are devoured by the strong. The nobles of the demon world are all high-level demons. But it seems they have overestimated the abilities of the high-level demons, leading to the training not going as expected. The sound of chains clanking. He glanced at the 2 slaves behind him. Those slaves must be soldiers of the holy nation. The sky gradually turned dark. Castro was stabbed with a knife on the left side of his chest. Kai wiped the blood off the knife. You were too careless. He slowly slipped out of the mansion. At the same time, Sheena had just finished eliminating a few people with her claws. She crazily scratched their faces. I killed all the demons in the mansion. Sheena waited for Kai's praise. No one discovered us. Did I do well? Kai gently stroked her head. Yeah, very good, but there were some strange noises. It would be troublesome if we woke the Count. Sheena happily followed behind. Even if he woke up, you could still kill him right away. Kai sighed dejectedly. That's not the issue. Alright, we still have another objective. Suddenly, someone from the prison glanced over. The 2 were startled, surprised. Someone, a human. Kai admitted. He got straight to the point. Yes, let's talk for a bit. He pointed at Sheena and a beastkin girl. After we're done, I'll take you 2 back to the Holy Nation's army. Cut to him going somewhere else, having read all the documents. Kai was still holding the documents in his hand, saying, just as expected, saving those 2 was the right decision. He expressed his opinion. I thought the Count's slaves would have useful information about the demon kingdom, but I didn't expect it to be so valuable. The slave he just saved spoke frankly. We don't want to be manual laborers like their slaves. I intended to gather as much intelligence as possible. In case we were saved, it would be useful. Hearing this, Sheena curiously asked, aren't you 2 planning to escape? He spoke, the collar also shining with a purple light. This collar has a special kind of magic. I heard it will burn me to death if I escape or resist my master. He revealed the horrifying function of this object. These collars are widely used in the demon kingdom to force slaves to work. Sheena glanced at Kai, guessing, so the reason Kai put this on our necks is so you can remove it. Kai immediately explained, it's just a replica, it has no magic. He earnestly recounted the past. Anyway, instead of being burned to death and never returning, we were slaves for 2 years. That time was like hell. When Castro's mood was bad, he wouldn't hesitate to torture the slaves. Suddenly, Kai's eyes gleamed, asking, who captured you two? Through Kai's sharp eyes, he observed them. Based on your conditions, I can see that you two are capable individuals. The slave girl revealed that they were from a special unit of the third Prince Leonhardt, also known as the Assassins of the Demon Kingdom. The male slave continued, revealing that it was a regular unit, gathering the most outstanding individuals of the Demon Kingdom. It seems this unit works specifically with the main army. We were ambushed while escorting supplies. Even though we were confident in our strength, we were completely overwhelmed. Kai crossed his arms, posing a question for them to ponder. Do you know why that unit isn't officially recognized? He replied, I heard that there are many infamous individuals in the army. Although they have skills, their existence was officially abolished due to violating military law. Kai's face became more serious, so they gathered those individuals into one unit, right? The male slave gritted his teeth. It's probably thanks to the third prince's charisma. His voice grew more hateful. We once saw a meeting between Castro and Leonhardt before, and when we saw the prince, we knew we didn't have the strength to defeat him. I know that the heavenly king of Aquileia is very impressive, but she's nothing compared to him. The purple-haired girl speculated, perhaps you've realized this already, but this area is under the direct control of the third prince. Instead of answering her question, Kai brought up another issue, is the third prince currently in this city? The male slave denied it. He pointed out the most accurate current location. No, according to what Castro said, it seems he's in the palace. The army of this city is currently commanded by the heavenly king of Aquileia. Kai wanted more information about the relationship between the third prince and the heavenly king. The purple-haired girl honestly answered, she's his fiancée and also the center of the faction supporting the third prince. This raised Kai's suspicion. Supporting faction. I heard that the demon kingdom isn't really united. The factions of princes and princesses fight each other to compete for the throne. It seems that even the demon princesses accept this way to create the strongest demon king. Kai wanted to ask further, what's the chain of command in the demon kingdom? He meticulously analyzed each person. The strongest faction used to be the first princes, but because the center of that faction, Wimberg, died, their influence decreased. The core of the first prince's faction is the military. He knows every single person of each faction. The same thing also happened to the second princess's faction after the death of Stonagaya. The core of the second princess's faction are high-ranking officials, and now Kai is facing Aquileia, who has seized the opportunity to increase her influence. The core of the third prince's faction are merchants, low-ranking nobles, power, the assassins of the demon kingdom, and there are many other factions as well. The fourth prince's faction, the fifth princess's faction, the sixth princess's faction. He lowered his head, looking very thoughtful. The influence of the four heavenly kings is very large, the male slave added. The reason is because they are the highest-ranking officials in the demon king's army, so it's hard to believe that the hero candidates can defeat two of the four heavenly kings. That event has plunged the internal situation into chaos. Kai's eyes became unusually sharp. I see, it seems the demon kingdom could be destroyed by internal conflicts. What about the last heavenly king? He seemed a little worried about the forces. The heavenly king of fire, Flame Rise, declared neutrality and will submit to whoever becomes the next demon king, partly because of the close relationship between the current demon king and the heavenly king of fire. The purple-haired girl added, I understand, but recently there's a trend suggesting that now isn't the time for civil war. Kai continued to analyze, they want to unite when facing a common enemy. It seems those demons are finally feeling the dangerous situation. Then Kai stood up and told Sheena to thank them for providing the information. Sheena escorted them to the Alliance forces. Before leaving, the purple-haired girl provided another piece of news. I heard that Aquileia is famous for cunning tactics. She specializes in sabotage and dirty tricks. Perhaps that's why the third prince's faction has a bad reputation. Kai walked past the two of them, expressing his intentions. You two, please convey this information to the Alliance forces. I don't intend to fight the heavenly king of water. The male slave suddenly felt confused. So what are you going to do? You killed Castro so easily. Are you one of the hero candidates? I will continue to infiltrate deeper into the demon kingdom. He glanced at them again. It seems I need to stir up a conflict. I will find a way to destroy them from within. Scene shifts to the next day. The group is moving into the deep forest. Midu led the whole team and brought the army to the destination. I see it. In front of them was a somewhat gloomy location, the city of Forlist. Amelia's face firmly expressed that it guarded the trade route between the east and west regions of the Demon Kingdom. Once we capture that city, our burden will be reduced. Edgar speculated a bit. I'm sure the enemy is defending very strictly. It wouldn't be surprising if the 4 heavenly kings appeared during this crisis. Midu was serious and strongly agreed with that opinion. That's right. The Demon Kingdom of Veldora, the territory of the third prince, the battle has begun around the city of Forlist. A battle erupted between the army and the demons. Initially, the Alliance army had the advantage. Everyone was busy fighting without rest. However, because the city of Forlist is one of the strategic bases of the demon army, things weren't as easy as they thought. The demons had mobilized an army of 80,000 soldiers, and furthermore, their morale was very high. One of them shouted, "Crush those inferior bugs." Meanwhile, the army of the Holy Nation consisted of 40,000 people, with 20,000 Federation warriors. The Allied forces only gathered 60,000 people. Midu saw them charging and said with a little worry, "Too many demons." Furthermore, except for the hero candidates and the knights, the remaining warriors were much weaker than the demons. At the same time, the Alliance army was being pushed to the brink. Midu swung his sword and slashed a demon, and said, "If they split up, it will be easier to defeat them." At this moment, Midu was somewhat self-reproaching. If only I had the ability to lead a powerful army. Recognizing that Midu was worried, Edgar immediately spoke loudly to reassure him, "Don't worry, Midu, leave it to us." But then, a moment later, Edgar was a bit motionless, his mouth suddenly opened. Then he screamed again in pain. At this moment, everyone was fighting and worried about EA. Edgar's face was covered with veins. A moment later it could be seen that Edgar's green hair had turned red. His body was bigger than ever, his hands were filled with sharp claws. The demons were a bit bewildered and asked, "What happened?" But as soon as the sentence ended, they were dealt with by EA in a few seconds, leaving no trace. They couldn't react with that speed. Midu was also somewhat bewildered. "This is..." Edgar returned to his old form and replied, "My roar effect is to intimidate the enemy's mind while enhancing the morale and combat ability of teammates. This is not difficult." Then he ordered loudly, "Face them directly, don't be afraid of the enemy." The soldiers all rushed forward with the same enthusiasm. At this moment Edgar stood still and called Midu's name. Edgar turned his head to look at Midu and reassured him, "You are not allowed to be afraid, otherwise it will affect those around you." Midu immediately changed his expression after hearing it, nodded seriously and replied, "Thank you Edgar-san." A moment later, Edgar once again spoke loudly with a determined expression, "We just need to boost our fighting spirit. If we directly confront them, we will not lose our heads." Just as Edgar said, the battle situation once again tilted towards the Allied forces. At first, the Allied forces lost because the number of soldiers in the demon army was too large, but the hero candidates showed their strength. At this moment, a pair of hands clenched tightly, radiating heat and said, "These demons are all weaklings." Then the red-haired boy said a bit impatiently, "Where are the high-ranking demons?" The demons were also a bit confused after hearing it. Right now Amelia ordered to finish them off. A demon army also rushed to fight without hesitation. The outcome of the battle was decided. Midu was busy with his hands and feet without rest. With each swing of his sword, each demon had to die. A thought echoed again, or so they thought. Suddenly Midu felt something. He glanced back where he felt a mysterious power. Then Midu used a slash to block the attack that was rushing towards him. At this moment, a figure appeared. He was all black from top to bottom, his face was hidden behind a white mask. Midu raised his sword as a precaution and thought, "He is too strong. Is he a high-ranking demon?" The red-haired boy also felt the killing intent behind him. He quickly turned around to kick him. Then his attack was easily blocked by the black-robed man. But this time it was another person because his mask was different from the previous one. The red-haired boy saw this and said, "Finally, there is someone worthy." On the other side, there was also no free time. The swords were constantly blocking each other. Edgar was also fighting with another black-robed man. While fighting he asked, "Who are you? Where do you come from?" The black-robed man didn't answer and just smiled slightly. Seeing the scene was a bit strange, she spoke up and asked, "What happened?" Then she thought and said, "It seems that our situation is slowing down." When she wasn't paying attention, another black-robed man was behind her. Amelia also felt something behind her. The soldier behind was also startled and panicked. He held a spear and pointed it at him and asked, "Who are you?" In the blink of an eye he was brutally killed, his head separated from his body. In a flash, he rushed to make the guard die without being able to blink. At this moment, Amelia was cautious and asked, "You bastard, how did you get here?" The soldiers saw someone approaching and shouted the command, "Protect the commander." The black-robed man never said anything from beginning to end, he just rushed like a tiger. At this moment, their eyes met and they were close to each other. Amelia worriedly thought, "They are aiming for my neck, I was too careless." A slash was swung down. When she looked back, she was slashed long on her lower abdomen, blood splattered and stained her clothes red. Amelia then fell off her horse and lay still, the black-robed man just coldly left. The guards were horrified and shouted, "Commander." Midu, hearing the call, turned around anxiously, looked, and called out loudly, "Amelia-san." Heinrich, standing nearby, saw this scene and couldn't help but be angry, cursing under his breath, "Damn it." Then, he quickly said loudly, "I will receive orders from here and deliver them to the medical area, don't let that guy escape." At this moment, a black-robed figure flew past the soldiers. Wherever he went, there was no longer any life. On this side, Shirori was doing her best to use healing magic to save the team. The Holy Kingdom's army was shocked at the loss of their commander. Finally, they were forced to retreat. Seeing the situation getting worse, Heinrich immediately ordered the retreat. "Everyone, retreat immediately." Because the power of the Demon Lord's army was exhausted, they decided not to pursue the alliance. The demons, seeing the soldiers retreat, looked at each other in bewilderment and asked, "Why are they retreating?" One of them said, "It seems there's a problem in their rear area." Then he said, "Let's quickly gather and reorganize the formation of the survivors." As night fell, 2 demon lackeys were patrolling and guarding. Inside a tent, guarded strictly by demon soldiers. Inside, a girl with pale blue hair sat on a chair and asked, "You didn't kill their commander?" She was one of the heavenly kings of Aquileia. The mysterious black-robed figure from earlier respectfully replied, "Yes, however, we have severely wounded her." Hearing this, she said, "That's fine, in any case, there's an undeniable fact that you saved us." But at this moment, the black-robed figure asked, "It will probably take some time for their commander to recover, this will slow down the actions of the alliance, what should we do?" She just calmly said, "This is the time for us to strike." She gave a satisfied smile and said, "At this time, the situation is deadlocked for both sides, so let's cut off their supply lines in the darkness." The black-robed figures, after receiving the order, immediately replied clearly. The map displayed the areas of the demon kingdom of Veldora. At the top was the territory of the 4th prince, below was the territory of the demon lord, which was also the capital of the demon kingdom, with a magnificent castle. Beside it were the territories of the 2nd princess and the 3rd princess, at the bottom was the territory of the 5th princess. At this time, Eisenhart was a dark and desolate scene. The entire city below seemed to be engulfed in a sea of fire, orange liquid spilled everywhere, and in the central position was a tall, pointed castle that was glowing from within. At this time, in front of the main gate to the castle, there were 2 carriages carrying goods parked there, and the demons were unloading the goods to be transferred inside. In a small corner, a demon was standing and talking to 2 big demons. Along the walls at the entrance, guards were also strictly arranged with 2 strong demons holding long spears in their hands. At the same time, Kai Mayer and Sheena were standing at a distance, looking at the castle. Kai stood with his arms crossed and said seriously, "Just as expected, the security is very tight." The 3 of them were all wearing large backpacks, and Sheena, looking towards the castle in the distance, said in surprise, "You can see that far?" "I can't even see anything." Mayer then spoke up and asked, "What do we do now?" Kai furrowed his brow, answered with tension, "I think it will be difficult to blend in with just a disguise. Moreover, just like when we were in Nutrat, a barrier has been set up to detect intruders." Hearing Kai mention this, Mayer also frowned seriously. "That's the 5th princess, Isabel." Mayer recalled the incident and Isabel's words, "No one can escape my space magic." Sheena, who didn't know about Isabel, asked blankly who she was. Kai replied, "She's a descendant of the demon lord. She set up a barrier in a city where we were discovered immediately." Sheena, hearing this, also had to sigh and say, "What a troublesome opponent." Mayer at this moment stood with her arms crossed in front of her chest. She pouted and glanced to the side with dissatisfaction, irritation, and resentment. She grumbled, "If it were normal demon magic, I could sense the residue, but at that time I didn't realize anything at all." Mayer continued, "She not only let us escape but also provided us with some information. Surely, she's scheming something." At this time, Isabel's cold and terrifying face appeared, along with the words, "Even the demon kingdom is divided into many factions. There is something I want." The image of the castle appeared, and Mayer continued, "Even without Isabel, this place is still the base of the demon kingdom. It wouldn't be surprising if there was a barrier of the same level here." Then Mayer glanced at Kai with a tense face and said, "Give me some time to ask the spirits to investigate further about this barrier." Kai looked forward with a serious and highly focused gaze and said, when the sun sets, we will approach the capital. I'm counting on you, Mayor. Returning to the scene of the glowing castle. At this moment, the demon standing guard raised his hand to his mouth and yawned deeply, then turned and went inside. And at this time, outside at the foot of the wall, Kai, Mayor and Sheena slowly and quietly approached the castle. Suddenly, Mayor felt something and immediately ordered Kai and Sheena, stop. The three of them stopped and knelt on one knee on the ground. Mayor, leading, put one hand on the ground, and the other hand outstretched, then said, although it's very faint, I can feel a trace of mana remaining in my head. Hearing this, Kai said, I can't see anything. Kai frowned in annoyance and gritted his teeth, thinking, as expected, I can't use my assessment ability on something that isn't a tangible object. Then Mayor continued, the plant residue is very faint, so I don't know whose miasma this sign belongs to. Now, in front of them, the entire city was enveloped by a shimmering and radiant purple shield, and Mayor continued, but it seems it's deployed to cover the entire city. This is a type of barrier demon magic. Mayor raised her hand to touch the shield and added, it's just a hypothesis, but they might be able to detect intruders through the absence of miasma. After all, only demons have miasma. Kai looked at Mayor and said, that method is really effective. They must have placed this type of barrier in every city to prevent any spies or intruders. Then Mayor said, let me try to see if we can get through. They looked at the solid magical shield and said, only a few demons can use space demon magic like this. Then, Kai immediately looked at Mayor with a tense expression and asked, is there any way to deceive this barrier? Hearing this, Mayor raised her hand to think, closed one eye, and said, I think we can fool them if we have miasma in our bodies. Hearing Mayor say that, Kai took the backpack off his shoulder and rummaged through it. As he took things out, he said, I took some items from Castro's mansion in case I needed emergency money. Seeing this, Mayor was as happy as if she had found gold. She joyfully grabbed Kai's backpack, rummaged through the items with bright eyes, and said, oh, if that's a miasma device. Sheena then asked, what is a miasma device? Kai explained to Sheena, saying simply, it's a device that possesses mana. It works like the magic tools humans use. The only difference is that the source of this device is miasma instead of human mana. Then, Kai suddenly glared. Kai continued the explanation to Sheena, however, we occasionally need to charge some magic into this device. At this moment, Kai took out a Castro flute and said, I stole this device to get some money, but I haven't used it, so it probably has miasma inside. Mayor happily took the flute and said, this device is fine, wait a moment, I'll transfer some mana into it. Mayor quickly turned away. Hearing her say that, Kai was also surprised and asked, you can do that too? Hearing Kai's question, Mayor turned her head to look at him, smiled, and said, I haven't just been sitting around all this time while the two of you were training together. Then Mayor began her work. She raised her right hand and furrowed her brow tensely. A shimmering light emanated from her palm with rays of light spreading around it. Simultaneously, she said, from the very beginning, this knowledge was passed down by my master. I just need to imagine the rest. Oh, spirits, please lend me your power. Then Mayor closed her eyes, feeling. Mayor extended her hand forward. At this moment, Mayor stepped cautiously towards the magic shield. Her body could now pass through that shield. Kai and Sheena silently watched Mayor with tense but hopeful expressions. At this moment, Mayor had completely passed through the magic shield and entered inside. She happily turned around to look at Kai and Sheena and said, it worked, you two can go in now. Hearing that, Kai and Sheena also quickly entered. Kai said, good, from now on, everything will be as usual, we'll climb the walls and sneak past the guards. At this moment, inside the city, the streets were extremely bustling and lively with the trading activities of the market. Besides that, there were also many demons appearing on the streets. Kai, Mayor, and Sheena had also disguised themselves to be able to safely infiltrate here. Kai transformed into a demon soldier and held chains in both hands, leading Mayor and Sheena. The two girls, having to transform into slaves with chains around their necks, were not happy. Kai glanced at the demons next to them and thought to himself, somehow, we managed to blend in here. Kai stood still, watching the demons pass by. The three of them stood still, anxiously watching the demons pass by without them realizing their disguise. Then, Kai turned around and looked at Mayor and Sheena, saying, this place is too vast, and there are also many demons. Sheena was annoyed inside, complaining, it's so annoying always having to pretend to be a slave. Kai continued, the closer we get to the city center, the more guards there are. It's better if we don't get too close to the city center. At this moment, Mayor was also observing the surroundings. The three of them continued their disguise and walked along the road. Sheena asked, aren't we supposed to infiltrate the castle and assassinate the demon lord? Kai replied, of course, that's our goal, but first, we need to gather information inside the capital. Then, Kai looked with a serious and tense expression and said to the two girls, it will be very dangerous for us if our identities are exposed, let's gather information carefully. A week later, at the castle. A slender and fair hand was holding a quill and signing. At this moment, inside the castle, in Isabel's office, she was sitting seriously and silently working. At this moment, she suddenly spoke, surprising. Isabel continued, I didn't expect you to overcome my barrier and appear before the 5 princesses, this time it was Kai. Kai looked at Isabel and said, it wasn't me, it was all thanks to Mayor. Isabel calmly placed the pen into the holder and said, I understand, you have become much stronger than before. At this moment, Kai made a suggestion to Isabel, we need to talk, Isabel, may I? Isabel quickly replied, okay, seeing that, Kai also had to say, she's quite straightforward, isn't she? Then Isabel looked at Kai and said, anyway, I'm grateful to you for defeating Wimberg, thanks to his death, I'm no longer being monitored and it's easier for me to move around. Hearing this, Kai asked Isabel, so that was your scheme, right? Isabel continued, it seems I underestimated you, I didn't think you could defeat him, I only thought I could use you as a pawn if you could escape, but you are more than what I expected. Then, Isabel added coldly, now you are no longer a pawn, but a valuable partner, you came here to meet me because you want to know more information, right? Hearing Isabel's question, Kai also frowned tensely and hesitated to say, your revolution. At this moment, Isabel gave a frightening smile, she stood up and said with satisfaction, you have passed my test, shall we move somewhere else to talk?